be impacted by the story of Zacchaeus, a couple of things will have to change in a lot of people's thinking when it comes to Zacchaeus and Jesus. This story of Zacchaeus breaks a lot of mindsets. But the first thing you've got to do is you can't see it as something that should have came out of something like this, a children's devotional. You almost expect me to open up a children's devotional and begin to tell you the story and take this kind of thing to children's church. It's not something you necessarily expect to see in the Bible or for a preacher speaking to adults to tell the story of Zacchaeus. But it's something that I've had to shift in, and it's something I've had to become a little different in the way that I think and a little different in the way that I do things in order to deliver this message. So I want you to be able to understand the story of Zacchaeus. Just in case you've never heard of Zacchaeus, let me tell you a little bit about him. He was a really bad guy. He was a tax collector who swindled people and took from them. He stole from them. And without getting into all the history and all that kind of thing, what you need to know is he was not a good guy. Zacchaeus is somebody who took. And Zacchaeus' life was changed. You see, he was a really little, short guy. And he was trying to see through the crowd where he knew Jesus was coming up. And he wanted to see Jesus. He wanted to see what Jesus was like and what Jesus looked like. So he climbed up in a sycamore tree and looked out of the tree to see Jesus. Well, what surprised Zacchaeus was Jesus actually looked up at him and said, "Zacchaeus, come down from out of that tree. I'm going to your house." Now this blew everybody's mind about Jesus, because you would think that Jesus would want to bring his presence into the presence of a bunch of people who are acting really holy and righteous, but actually he's going to go over to this sinner Zacchaeus' house. But look at what happens when Jesus goes to his house. When Jesus shows up at Zacchaeus' house, Zacchaeus says, "I'm going to give half of my possessions away." And then Zacchaeus says, "If I've taken anything from anyone, I'm going to give them back 4 times as much." Wow, look at the impact that Jesus has on the life of Zacchaeus. Look at how much that changed the life of Zacchaeus by this encounter. Now, I must confess to you that I really thought of the story of Zacchaeus as a children's story. And when the Lord placed this on my heart, I thought, "Lord, am I speaking in children's church or something? Is this a children's message?" But the Lord really showed me you need to speak this to adults. And here's the shift that took place in me. You see, this was my son's first devotional when he was just a baby. I was sitting down with my wife, and we began to, and with Isaac, and we began to go through the devotion and talk about Zacchaeus and bring the understanding of how Zacchaeus' life was changed by Jesus. I think about my daughter when she was 3 years old and it was nap time, and she's calling out from her room. She said, "Zacchaeus, you come down, I go your house." Those were her exact words. "Zacchaeus, you come down, I go your house." And so she understood Zacchaeus. It was a song we would sing. Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. He climbed up in the sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see. Zacchaeus wanted to see what Jesus looked like. But where my mind was shifted was I heard about a German missionary who went into Africa and began to share the story of Zacchaeus. And as he shared the story of Zacchaeus, he told people about it. These people were so impacted by it that they began to go even to their places of business where some of them had been stealing and said to their boss, "I've been stealing from you, but I want to bring everything back." There were people who had been taking, who were thieves. They had taken things back to people because they had heard this story of Zacchaeus. Their lives were completely impacted. The real thing that really hit me as I began to go through this and as I read the account of Zacchaeus, and it's found in Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10, what really hit me was how it ends. What Jesus says at the very end of it. You see, because I used to teach in Bible college, and I taught a class called New Testament Survey, and in that class we would talk about the key verses of each book, and this is the key verse to the book of Luke. Luke chapter 19, verse 10 is the key verse. The Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which is lost. That's the thing to understand this book. And it comes on the tail end of understanding Zacchaeus. So you see, this is more than just a children's story. This is a story about Jesus coming in to impact people's lives. So there are two shifts that need to take place, two things that you need to be able to understand. Number one, Zacchaeus is more than a children's story. And number two, we need to understand that Jesus is looking to come and save. He's looking for lost, broken people. So let's take a look at Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. And this is what it says. It says, he entered Jericho and was passing through, he being Jesus. And behold, there was a man named Zaccheus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. And so he's this chief tax collector who has a lot of money. He's really rich, Zacchaeus was. And Jesus is passing through his town. He's passing through Jericho. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was. But on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was small in stature. He was a short guy, man. He was a little guy. He couldn't see up above the crowd. So he ran on up ahead and climbed into a sycamore tree to see him. And he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry, come down, for I am going to stay at your house today. For I'm coming over to your place, Zacchaeus, this really bad guy. So he hurried and he came down and he received him joyfully. Verse 7 says, and when they saw it, you know who they are, the religious people, when they saw it, they all grumbled and said, and this is what they said. They said, he has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. I mean, they're just, they're mad about this. But watch what happens as Jesus goes into his house. It says, and Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. He's going to give back 4 times as much to anybody that he's ripped off. This is an encounter with Jesus. This is a miracle. It's powerful. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. That's powerful. Realize that Jesus didn't just come to show up at a worship service. Jesus didn't just come to show up when you're really praying and things like that. He's come looking for lost people. And he's looking to go into the house of lost people. Are you willing to receive Jesus into your house? One thing we need to learn from the life of Zacchaeus is that he changed his position. He changed his position. He was somebody who was small in stature. He was really short, and he was a little guy. But not only was he a short guy, he was also a lowlife. He was somebody who would take from people. If you look up the definition of lowlife, that's somebody who's willing to steal from people, somebody who's willing to take and is more interested in themselves than anybody else. And so he was that. He fit that bill. He was a lowlife, but he changed his position. He climbed up in a tree. He put himself in a completely different position. Now, there's something that really should stand out here. He's not hiding from God. See, so no matter how bad things get, no matter how bad a person gets, they should never hide from God. They should always be in a position to allow the Lord to show up and maybe even come to their house. A second thing that we really need to discover here, and we need to find out, is about the life of Zacchaeus, is that he was willing to change his plans. Zacchaeus was willing to change his plans. I really don't think that Zacchaeus was planning on having Jesus over for a meal that day. It's not like Zacchaeus was sitting down thinking, well, now let's see here. swindle some people at the beginning of the day, see who you can steal from and take from them, collect some taxes in the right way maybe, and be mean to some people, ignore some people as you walk by them, meet with Jesus, have him over for lunch. The next thing is I'll give half my possessions away, and then I'm going to give back fourfold to anybody I've stolen from. It's not like that was his plan for the day. You see, he had to change his plans. There was a change of plans for Zaccheus. You know something this should say to us? Never be so busy that Jesus can't change your plans. Never be so busy that Jesus can't change your plans. The third thing, and this is the real miracle right here, is that Zaccheus changed the way that he saw his possessions. Zaccheus changed the way that he saw his stuff. He went from thinking that everything that he had belonged to him to realizing that everything on earth belongs to God. Everything in the universe belongs to God. What a shift in thinking, man. What an amazing thing that takes place because he had an encounter with Jesus. How do you see the things that you have in your house? How do you see the things that you have in your car? How do you see the things that you have that you just have, period? How do you see them? Do you see them as yours? This is my stuff and nobody should touch it? Or do you see it as belonging to God? Looking at the fourth thing, we realize that the very purpose of Zacchaeus' life shifted from being a taker to being a giver. It shifted from being a taker to being a giver. Before this encounter, he thought, I'm going to get what I can. I'm going to get everything that I can. To shifting to thinking, I'm going to give everything that I can. What can I give? To beginning to look around and saying, what do I have that I can give? That's an amazing shift in thinking. The way we need to be able to think is not, what can I get, but what can I give? What am I in a position right now to give to others? The final words in this section of the Bible that we read the account of what takes place with Zaccheus, the final words here really show us something powerful, something that's earth-shaking, something that's incredible, and that's that Jesus is looking for lost people. Jesus is looking for lost people. So today, right now, if you're lost, simply say, here I am, Lord. Change your position. But go from hiding to going up in the tree saying, here I am, Lord. Help me. Here I am, Lord. I need you. And then when he shows up, follow him. It's really that simple. Follow him and go where he's going. So simply change your position and say, here I am, Lord. And change your perspective and say, here I am, Lord. And then follow him. Now, you may be watching this and you may think, well, I've done that before. I began to follow Jesus, but I got lost again along the way. What do I do? Well, you do the same thing. You just stop and say, here I am, Lord. Save me. And then when he shows up, follow him. Follow where he takes you. That's the life of a believer, is to follow Jesus Christ. And to realize that when you get lost, it's time to stop and ask for him to return. Ask for him to help you, show you the way again. And then follow him with all your heart.